A lot has been happening with Israel versus Hamas and the Gaza Strip. Currently, there is a famine, a food shortage in the Gaza Strip with the Palestinian people. This isn't to get in whose fault it is. This is just to show what is happening and what the news of the day is. So worst case scenario of famine is happening in Gaza. Food crisis experts warn. This is according to Associated Press. The worst case scenario of famine is currently playing out in the Gaza Strip, the leading international authority on food crisis said in a new alert on Tuesday. The alert, still short of a formal famine declaration, follows an outcry over images of emaciated children in Gaza and reports of dozens of hunger-related deaths after nearly 22 months of war. International pressure led Israel over the weekend to announce measures including daily humanitarian pauses in fighting in parts of Gaza and airdrops. As you know, it's been going all over social media of children who are dying from starvation, and Israel came out and spoke. They said, hey, there isn't starvation going on in the Gaza Strip. Then President Trump, if you remember, with the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, he was speaking and he said, no, it looks like there is a starvation going on in the Gaza Strip. Since then, Israel has sort of changed their tune. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, said Gaza has teetered on the brink of famine for 2 years, but recent developments have dramatically worsened the situation, including increasingly stringent blockades by Israel. And it's really sad photos. A formal famine declaration, which is rare, requires the kind of data that the lack of access to Gaza and mobility within has largely denied. But independent experts say they don't need a formal declaration to know what they're seeing in Gaza. Just as a family physician can often diagnose a patient she's familiar with based on visible symptoms without having to send samples to the lab and wait for results, so too we can interpret Gaza's symptoms. This is famine, Alex DeWall says. Yeah, so here's Israel's response. So like I said, so Israel at first said there isn't starvation going on. We're not starving the people. Since then, according to CBS News, the Israel military began a limited pause in fighting in 3 populated areas of Gaza for 10 hours a day as part of a series of steps that it says would give the UN and other aid agencies secure land routes to tackle a deepening hunger crisis. The IDF said it would begin a tactical pause in Gaza City and these other areas to increase the scale of humanitarian aid entering the Gaza Strip. So they have agreed. At first, it was the U.S. said, hey, we're going to send more food to the Gaza Strip. And now Israel has agreed to allow a lot of this food to enter in by doing a ceasefire. Whichever path we choose, we will continue to allow the entry of minimal humanitarian supplies, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says. IDF operations will be paused during these certain time periods from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Israel will continue to work with international agencies as well as the U.S. and European nations to ensure the large amounts of humanitarian aid flows into the Gaza Strip. Israel said Monday that more than 120 truckloads of food aid were distributed by the UN into the Gaza Strip. The military early Sunday carried out airdrops into Gaza, which included packages of aid with flour, sugar, and canned food. Food experts have warned for months of the risk of famine in Gaza, where Israel had restricted aid because it says Hamas siphons off goods to bolster its rule without providing evidence for that claim. Images emerging from Gaza in recent days of emaciated children have fanned global criticism of Israel. Israel really has had a pretty rough PR problem here in the last week. Israel said the new measures were taking place while it continues its offensive against Hamas in other areas. Ahead of the pause, Palestinian health officials in Gaza said at least 27 Palestinians were killed in separate attacks. So there hasn't been necessarily a ceasefire yet, but there are these windows of opportunity that Israel has given for aid to enter into the Gaza Strip. So hopefully there will be plenty of food, and really hopefully this conflict will come to an end very, very quickly. But in the meantime, hopefully there's the right amount of food entering in, and then there's great access inside of the Gaza Strip for the Hamas authorities to be able to feed their children. Hopefully that, or their children, their citizens, hopefully that goes well. Senior Hamas official said that Israel's change of tact on the humanitarian crisis amounted to an acknowledgement that there were starving Palestinians in Gaza, and that the move was meant to improve its international standing and not save lives. He said that Israel will not escape punishment and will inevitably pay the price for these criminal practices. It doesn't seem, according to that quote, that Hamas is really weakening their verbiage about wanting conflict with Israel or the desire to have a ceasefire. Hopefully there will be a ceasefire. Hopefully this will all be ended very shortly. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with a friend. I will see you next time.